Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us here for our virtual town hall. We'd much prefer to do this in person, like the draft the other day, but some things we cannot change. So we're all here to answer some of your questions. Some have been, well, actually, a lot have been submitted already, and we're expecting more over the course of this conversation. So please submit questions. We'll get to as many as possible. And we'd love to obviously hear from the coaches and what they have to say and get your feedback. It's obviously a very trying time with the pandemic. Our hopes certainly are that all of you are well and safe and that your families are. And then hopefully in time, we'll all be able to resume our normal lives and get back to sports, which is something that the four of us really can't wait to have happen. And I'm sure most of you. But that said, certainly, with me, I have Coach Collen and Coach Petersen and Coach Taylor. We're here to answer your questions. Specifically about the team, and we can certainly answer some other questions, but we're excited to be here. We had a great day on Friday. We're very excited about that. It's been a very exciting off season. But that said, I'm going to throw out the first couple of questions. So I'll turn it over to Nicki and Mike and Darius. And guys, how you doing? How are you guys holding up during this pandemic, and how are you coping with it? Coach, I'll start with you, Coach Collen.
Probably as well as can be expected. My day consisted of making sure my son would turn around and get his English and language arts assignments in. That seemed to have come up missing from the last 3 weeks. So homeschool mom / preparing for the draft and, really starting to turn our attention now to how to prepare our team now that we're done with the draft. But everybody's healthy in my house, and other than being a little stir crazy, have a lot less to complain about than other people.
Darius, how are you doing?
We're doing well here. Fortunately for us as well, everyone is healthy. I have 2 young ones, 3 years old and 1 year old. So they keep me pretty busy and keep us busy. So we like to keep them on their routine school schedule. Normally they would be in school right now. So basically my day consists of waking up in the morning and making them breakfast and helping get them dressed. And then I try to get a quick workout in while my mom teaches my 3-year-old how to write her name and write letters and numbers. Mm-hmm. And I put my 1-year-old to sleep for her first of 3 naps. And right around that time, by the time she wakes up, it's lunchtime, it's playtime, and put them down for naps again. So that my schedule really runs off of my kids. My wife is busy a lot in the basement, doing Zoom calls and stuff for her job as the head coach at Georgia. So we just balance it out back and forth, try to make our schedules fit. If she has something going on, I try not to schedule something. If I have something going on, she tries not to schedule. So, our days have been going by pretty fast between doing stuff with the kids and feeding them and just activities. So we're fortunate to have my parents here with me for the rest of the month. So they've been helping out a lot.
That's great. Coach Petersen, how are you holding up there in Texas?
All good, my man. Our house, again, everybody's healthy, and as Nicki said, spent time preparing for the draft, and now trying to spend time thinking about how to help us best utilize the pieces we have. But specifically here at the house, it is good news, bad news. The good news for me is I get to spend more time with Patty. The bad news for Patty is she's stuck spending more time with me. So we're just trying to balance that, like Darius said, balance it. Trying to balance that out. And so far, we're both surviving.
Well, appreciate that feedback. That's pretty funny. And Darius, sometimes we forget that you're the second most famous person in your household. So, I hope that you're doing okay there. And
I'm actually third. JC is the second most famous.
There you go. And Coach, you had a son get married in the last couple of weeks, right?
We did in January, in March. I said January about 3 times. In March. Right at the same time, all of the conference basketball tournaments were getting canceled. Our oldest son, Riley, got married on a mountaintop outside of Asheville. It was awesome. Really good.
Fantastic. So, talking about the pandemic and where we are, we still had a very productive off season that started back in the fall. There's a lot of games to be watched, and you guys did a lot of scouting. So give us a little, background on the prep that you had to get ready for the season before everything was canceled, and how prepared you guys felt going in as a staff to the draft.
Who do you want this to go to? You want to
You all can answer.
Oh, well, we tend to divide and conquer. So as a staff, we look ahead of the season and kind of organize our schedules regionally to start with. With Mike being in Dallas, he can catch a lot of games in that Dallas, Waco, College Station, those games. And so he was there for Kennedy Carter's big night against the USA basketball team. Darius sees almost all the SEC games, traveling some with Georgia and then at home. And I'm lucky enough that with Georgia Tech here, catch a lot of the ACC games here. So we start the season kind of looking at what are the easy games for us to see. And, certainly when the season starts and before free agency hits, we're not as sure which direction we're going to go in the draft, because we have to kind of fill out our roster and free agency and then fill in the gaps with the draft. So, we saw a lot of different players through conference play, December, January, February, before things shut down. So, as that time goes on, we evaluate in terms of who we want to see again. If Mike sees somebody twice, do I need to see them? And then just a lot of video prep for it.
Anything to add, Mike or Darius?
No.
Well, I think the thing that's really nice, as Nicki said, you can see all of the players that are involved in the draft process. I mean, you can see every game on film, but it's getting that first-hand view that's really important, and doing the background work. I mean, Coach Collen especially, talked to countless people, from college head coaches, college assistant coaches, trainers, AAU coaches, the family members. I mean, the background work that's done to prepare for the draft sometimes gets really underestimated, I think. And I know, especially for Nicki, she spent a lot of time on background stuff to make sure we're getting the right people involved in the organization.
So it's been an interesting off season, as we said, but we also had a productive one. So let's talk a little bit about free agency. Why don't you guys break down the free agents we've brought in, give us a little background on them for people who are not familiar with them, and share some thoughts if you could.
Well, how about we split it up? Darius, you take the posts that we went out and got in free agency to start, and then let Mike take the free agent guards that we signed.
Sounds good. So the post players we signed through free agency. One, Kalani Brown, who is a 6'7" left-handed post player that originally came to us in a trade from LA, played at Baylor, won a national championship. And what she brings to the table for us is a young, talented post player that, one, gives us the ability to guard some of the other bigger post players in the league one-on-one. But also, there's more to the table that she brings in terms of her scoring ability to be able to throw the ball in the post and have someone that can score with their back to basket. She also has a really soft touch and can, we expect her to grow to where she'll be at the point where she can make 3-pointers. The other thing about her is, even with her size, she moves really well. So she rim runs really well. And we're just excited about having her on our roster to be a big piece in the near future. And then Glory Johnson, who I've watched, coaching in the SEC when she was at Tennessee, and her growth in the league as a player that, she brings some versatility at the 4 spot and can probably play some 5 because she has with Dallas. But she also has 3-point range. She can put the ball on the floor. She's another that has a really nice turnaround jump shot. She brings a toughness to our post group, and also just an edge with rebounding. So I think just her maturity and her experience in the league, along with some of the versatility that she brings, is definitely going to help our front line.
And my list is a little longer. We had a few more perimeter players. The two that got the most fanfare, and rightfully so, of course, were Courtney Williams and Shakina Strickland from Connecticut. Obviously, we're delighted to have both of them in our organization. Shakina is just a premium scorer. She was 5th in the WNBA last year in effective field goal percentage, and can really catch and shoot the basketball. She'll provide great spacing. She's also really understands how to create her own space and move to get open. She's got size, so you can post her a little bit. And she's a sneaky better defender than people give her credit for. I think people have kind of hung the tag that she's not a great defender on her, and I'm just not buying that. She's got great size and length, super high IQ. So she's a great addition for us. And then, of course, Courtney, who had a huge season last year, has had great seasons the last several years in Connecticut, was huge in the playoffs. The thing that, obviously, she's a great scorer, premium scorer. But the thing that goes undervalued with Courtney, I think, is she's much better passing the ball than people give her credit for. I mean, she was the only non-point guard in the W last year with a higher assist percentage than Courtney Williams was Tolliver. And she might be a point guard anyway. And so she's somebody that can distribute the ball and is a willing passer and does a great job. The other thing with Courtney is, she had the highest rebound percentage of any guard in the league. And so she does a lot of things to help the team. And then in addition to those two, of course, we signed Blake Dietrich back. Okay, so it's kind of a returning free agent, right? And Blake, of course, just plays with great energy, great pace, really understands role, really understands how to fit into a system, and is just a great teammate. We signed Alexis Jones from the Sparks. Alexis is a solid, really good combo guard, can score, can handle, had some really nice games while she was with LA, and kind of got into a numbers bind there, and so they had to let her go. And then Alena Bikina, I'm sure I didn't say her last name right, but it's easier than her other last name, which has about 5 syllables in it, is a really solid, really experienced European League point guard, veteran, that we're really, we think can really help us just in terms of her ability to run a team. And she's a good athlete. She can score. So we really added a lot of good pieces on the perimeter to go with what we have returning.
So there's some questions we've received from fans, and we'll kind of scatter them throughout as we kind of go through this. Excuse me. But one of the questions that's come in is that they're excited about the moves. Camp will determine a lot regards to how the pieces potentially fit together. What are your initial thoughts specifically at the 3 outside of Strick? Could Tip slide over?
Yeah, easy question to answer. Absolutely. I think we view our roster as pretty interchangeable. We tend not to have 2s and 3s. We play wings. So, it's just a matter of running one wing or the other. And we don't even predetermine necessarily what side of the floor they're running. So for us, we could certainly have lineups with Courtney on one wing and Tiffany on the other. We could have lineups even with Strickland running with them at the 4. So, we will play Tiffany some at the 3. We will play Strickland some at the 3. We're just not afraid to play little or big or, however we want to play to take advantage of some type of mismatch that we might have.
Another question was, what was the key piece missing last season, do you think? And how do you think that will be able to be overcome this season? I know we just discussed that with free agency and through the draft, but what was the key puzzle piece missing last season? Well,
I think that one, you could say a lot of different things. You could say it's playmaking, but I think it comes down to we just didn't put the ball in the basket. We didn't make open shots. And so I think we've, through free agency, gone out and gotten a lot of players who can make shots, even in the draft. So whether it's a shot off the dribble, whether it's a shot inside of 5 feet, whether it's a shot outside the arc. I think we evaluated all those areas. And the key for us, once again, I'm sure people have heard me say it before, but we were last in the league in 3-point field goal percentage a year ago. We were second to last inside of 5 feet. So we didn't finish at the rim and we didn't finish behind the arc. So going and getting Kalani, going and getting Glory, and then all the guard pieces that can make shots. I think all of a sudden, as someone who's always going to see importance and value in defense, and while we went out in free agency and signed a lot of good offensive players, you know, I'm always going to look through a lens of, okay, well, if they're a great offensive player, are they adequate defensively? How do they fit into a defensive scheme? You know, and so I still think when you're making shots and you're allowed to set your defense, you become a better defensive team. Ironically, our effective field goal percentage on the defensive side wasn't that bad last year, but we just didn't put the ball in the basket enough to make that really matter for us in wins and losses.
Another question is, I love the offseason moves, but would like to know what the expectations of the Dream are for the season. Is it to get back in the playoffs or just to be more competitive?
Well, I think you start with competitiveness. I mean, we're never gonna undervalue what we're capable of doing. You know, I said it from the minute I took the job here. Every team in this league has an expectation of going to the playoffs. You don't get very far in professional sports coaching if you don't win. So, you know, I think what we start with is getting back to the point where we're competitive and let it play out from there. I mean, right now with not knowing what the season's going to look like or when it's going to start, you want to build your system, your pace. You want it to look a certain way, and it takes time for that to develop. It takes time for players to mesh and play well together. So, you know, we want to play good basketball. We want to play competitive basketball. We're not going to tie it to wins and losses, but our expectation is always going to be in the playoffs.
What do you guys think, Mike and Darius? You know, is it about being competitive? Is it about playoffs? I mean, what's important to you as a coach? Is it the growth over the season? Is it something else?
You start, DT.
Well, I definitely agree with Coach Nicki. It is about the competitiveness, and the results will come from that. If we're competing at a high level at both ends of the floor, and you know, following the game plan, I think we'll be in great situations with the personnel we have to win a lot of ball games. So like excited about that and looking forward to that happening. But you know, again, the other stuff falls into play when you come ready to work every day, when you compete, and you know, more importantly, you build that team chemistry and those relationships where they want to play with each other and for each other.
Yeah, and I would just amen to everything that Nicki and Darius said. And then the other thing I would add is I think there's this perception that there was a huge gap in terms of our productivity between year one and year two. And while there certainly was a gap, okay, no question, between year one where we set a franchise record for wins and year two where we had the worst record in the league, okay? Last season's team just couldn't find a way to win close games. In the first year, 2 years ago, we won every close game, literally. We won every single close game. And so a lot of that progress in terms of the wins and losses will come to what Nicki and Darius have talked about: trust in the process, playing the right way, being competitive, but then having the people on the floor that can close the deal, that can close out a close game on either end. Get a stop, get a rebound, hit a big shot. And I think that we've addressed those kinds of needs in the offseason, both through through free agency and the draft.
So there's been a lot of change for us in this offseason. We have a new logo. We have a new arena. We obviously have pretty much a new team. What are you guys most excited about? And maybe kind of break down a little thought, even though, you know, the logo and the arena were announced back in October, but as we get closer and hopefully get to be playing there, what are you guys' thoughts on these things?
Well, I'd like to say my favorite would be, you know, playing at Gateway. but it's hard to say that right now, not knowing when that's going to happen or the likelihood that is going to happen. But I think, for me and coaching in professional sports and seeing women's basketball at a lot of different levels, I think the thing that makes me excited about that place is the atmosphere that I think the fans will be able to create. And, it's something that we've missed, even going back to all our games last year, trying to drive fans even to Georgia Tech during the playoffs. I thought, in our final few, Eastern Conference championship type games, we finally had crowds at Georgia Tech that really pushed us along, that were fun for our players to play in front of and for, and, they felt that energy. And I think that's a big part of sports, is feeding off the energy of the crowd. And so to have the opportunity to play in a smaller venue where we have that advantage, I'm excited to coach in that environment as well.
And for me, I would say it's all the new pieces on our roster, right? I mean, to me, it's just there's so many interesting possibilities with this roster, from what lineups on the floor to how we play offensively to how we play defensively to what our final roster looks like, frankly, who makes that final roster. And so there's just so many really interesting pieces to be put together that'll really make for a fun process, not just in assembling the team in training camp, but then in growing this group as the season goes along, because there'll be some growth. I mean, you're going to put a bunch of people out there that haven't necessarily played together before. And so this is a team that will probably, much like our first year, okay, this is a team that's going to be a lot better in game 20 than they were in game 1, because they'll grow together as a group as we put those interesting pieces together.
Mike, your answer was better than mine.
Different, Coach. It was different.
No, it was better. It was better.
See that?
People are always better than things. Let's face it. People are better than things. So.
How do you guys see the rookies fitting in and competing against veterans in training camp?
Go ahead, D.
Well, I'll start with Kennedy Carter. I mean, this is a kid we've watched, play for 3 years, and I just remember last year talking as a staff and saying that we know there's some big names coming out in the draft, but she by far is the most ready to play in our league right now, just with her ability and what she can do in terms of creating shots for herself, creating shots for others, just an explosive scorer and a great athlete. And so, I think Kennedy, being able to play playing the one for us and pushing the pace, and also, just being able to, get in the paint and create shots for other people, but also being able, you have to guard her honest. You can't leave her open. But if you get up too close on her, she's also going to pick you apart. And I think that's the part of her game that most people don't recognize, because everybody, looks at her scoring average and they just think all she wants to do is shoot shots. But, the kid really has a really good IQ, understands the game, and she'll get the ball to the people that need to have the ball. So that's one with Kennedy playing some point for us. And then Brittany Brewer, just, watching her and what she brings to the table. First of all, she runs like a deer. Like I think she could probably outrun most posts in our league right now with just how hard she runs. And then she's a lefty, so she has a nice soft touch around the basket, has great footwork and post moves where she can finish with both hands. And then also she has the ability to extend her range. She hasn't taken a lot of threes, and again, those are college threes. But we do see her with development being able to step out and hit the WNBA three without an issue. So excited to see, the versatility that she brings to our post group and to our team. And then, Kobi Thornton is a great athlete. Didn't get talked about a lot because Clemson didn't have the season that they had, 2 years ago. But has really good mid-range game, a very good athlete. has a really good face-up game and just brings a versatility where she can, 3-4 switch. And, I think with some work on her ball handling, she could be a really good player in this league because she's a great athlete. She's a WNBA athlete already. But just, with some work on her ball handling and extending her range, I think she's an underrated player for our team. So she'll challenge some people definitely in training camp if given the opportunity.
I'm going to piggyback off him and talk about Brittany Brewer because I think a lot of our fans probably don't really know who she is. Texas Tech hasn't had a lot of team success while she was there. She played for 2 different coaches, a lot of turnover. The group that she came in with her freshman year, none of them were there by the time she was a senior. One of those blue collar kids that just kind of stuck it out and, just maybe people don't recognize quite how good she is. I was listening to Gary Blair talk about her and say, what people don't realize about Brittany Brewer is that she was recruited by A&M and Texas and Baylor and some of those big schools. But being from Abilene, she was a kid who just wanted to stay closer to home. And so she wasn't just this kid that nobody knew about, but certainly over the course of the season, you saw her in mock drafts, 2nd and 3rd round. She's just someone that the more I watched her on film and looked at, what posts that we thought were going to be available in that 2nd round and how they'd fit in, on our rosters, what we would call our 5th post, kind of that glue kid that can maybe play either position a little bit, who's not afraid to wait her turn, but could be thrown in a pinch. I just thought the more I watched her and then when I talked to her, I think when fans have a chance to interact with her, incredibly humble, incredibly grateful, wants to get better, wants to work, knows she, couldn't wait to get back in the gym. Talked to me about issues that she had in terms of getting her elbow too far in front of her face and just little things. She's a student of the game. And so really excited about her. And then even Michaela Pivick, she's not going to back down from anybody. Someone that a year ago was mentioned as high as late 1st round, maybe the best guard rebounder in the country in terms of almost averaging a double-double, but just tough-nosed kid, javelin thrower as well in college. So she's tough. Another one of those incredible character kids. Her head coach reached out to me right after we drafted her and said, he's just never had a better player in terms of someone who represented their team, represented their university, and represented herself better than Michaela. So, while she's maybe one of those players that's not a great shooter or not a great this, she's good at everything, and just a really tough kid. So I don't think she's going to back down from any challenge in camp.
And I'd be remiss. I totally skipped right over Michaela, who I think was probably the steal of the draft. So let me just say that Michaela Pivick, I think, was a steal of the draft, dropping to us that low. I think she's going to come in with a chip on her shoulder and have something to prove.
Yeah, we're excited about the draft picks for sure. What about team chemistry? That's obviously very important. And then, the big question and the new buzzword, social distancing. What happens? If there's a camp, how do you create social distancing and space? And all those guidelines are still to be determined. But the most important thing is chemistry. How do we create chemistry with old and new players?
Probably a little bit at a time. And I do think, you always hear, that the great teams get along off the floor and all that. I don't know that I am always going to agree with that at the professional level. I think they have to have great chemistry in terms of a willingness to compete with each other on the floor, to understand what their role is and how they fit in. I don't think it doesn't help when they get along, but I also think it's a little bit of an overrated piece. We need them to play well together. We need them to share the ball. We want them to all want to win. We want them to have a singular goal as a group, and then understand that within that singular goal, that they can all kind of achieve personal success, whatever that looks like to them. Whether it's personal accolades, whether it's an improved season from a year ago or a career type year. So some of it falls on our staff to get them to understand what those roles are, within our group, and to also engage them to the point that they define some of those things both personally and collectively. So, in the world of social distancing, we just have to get creative with how we connect them through Zoom, and whether it's in small groups and Darius takes the posts and Mike takes the guards, and they get to know each other through chalk talks, to Zooms without the staff, to happy hours as a group, just different ways that we can engage them and them start to get to know each other, so that playing for each other seems feasible once we touch the floor. I think, a big plan of ours from the off season was to do more team building throughout the season. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, but we had plans to build in ropes courses and things that help them get to know one another off the court. And, with a shortened season, or, however this is going to break down, we're going to just have to be creative with that.
There's a lot of questions coming in about the season itself, and I can just be very vague in how I answer that. There's a lot of conversation, obviously, going on at the league level. We're not right now in a position to announce what may or may not happen with the league. All of that would be directed from the league itself. So as far as a season with fans or no fans, or a truncated schedule, the use of the Olympic break, playoffs, timing, set schedule, all those things, as much as I'd love to expound upon that, I really am not at liberty to do so. So I apologize, because I know that's a big question for all of our fans, right? When are we going to get out there? When are we going to play? When is camp going to open? And, the four of us sit here every day and kind of ponder that ourselves and discuss it and make contingency plans based upon X dates. But we don't know the answer to that right now. So I don't want you to think I'm not answering that question. There's just not much I can share on that topic right now. But I know that our, account reps have been speaking with all of our season ticket holders a lot. I think that they're giving you all the most up-to-date information as possible. And we will. So as soon as we hear something that we can share, we will call you immediately. And, we want to make sure, first and foremost, that you guys are healthy. That's our first major concern. We want to make sure our players are healthy and our coaches are healthy and our staff is healthy. Beyond that, when the all clear is given, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that everybody's on the same page. They know what's going on, and we can kind of move forward with the season itself. And we're really excited, as we've been just talking about, with our off season. So that said, who do you guys think our toughest competition will be this year, based upon the current rosters in place?
Mike.
Well, it would be pretty hard to not say Washington, I think. They kind of have everybody back, and they got Tina Charles, right? That sounds like a pretty good roster to me, and they've got, obviously, a great coaching staff. So, I think what you've seen is there's been a lot of turnover on a lot of teams in our league. And so most teams are dealing with a somewhat shuffled deck in terms of their roster. I was sent some stuff to coach today, and because I'm a nerd and because I don't have anything to do, this is the kind of stuff I look up. But, the average team in our league is going to have about 5.5 new players on their roster. So it's not like we're the only team that had roster turnover. 3 or 4 of them are going to have 6 or 7 new players. And so a lot of it will be what Coach talked about. A lot of it will be that chemistry of learning to play together and putting those pieces together. But, obviously the teams that were really strong last year, most of them didn't take huge steps backwards. Washington's going to be very good. I would assume Connecticut will be good. I would assume Las Vegas will be good. I would assume LA will be good, right? They were good last year. They kept the majority of their main pieces together and have added some pieces. And so you would guess that at the start of the season, those will be the teams that people think are going to be the best. But, as Coach said, so much of this is going to come down putting the pieces together, having the right chemistry, playing with one another, for one another. And every team in this league has really good players. They just do. And then it becomes a matter of how you put the pieces together.
So arguably, this was the most active offseason in league history, and probably one of the most exciting. What are some of the moves, aside from the Dream, that you thought were maybe surprising or somewhat, crazy or other? I mean, really, how do you think that the face of the league has changed due to this free agency in the new CBA?
I think for me, the most surprising, or obviously the one that really, shook me as a basketball fan was Simone Augustus to LA. Just thought, she was one of those players that was going to go around the league and do a little bit of a retirement farewell this year. Not that we knew that for sure, but that was kind of one of those things that was bouncing around. So to not see her in a Lynx uniform is going to be a little weird. I think to kick it off, Kristy Tolliver making the move back to LA just shows you the power of money, and it's as simple as that. With a new CBA and more dollars, and Washington looking both short term and long term, and the timing of all of it, with all of their key pieces being unrestricted free agents, and how do you divvy up the amount of money that was going to be necessary. And certainly LA being willing to give Kristy both the full max deal as well as the 3-year part of it, I think was why she went there. I'm not sure she leaves a championship team without long-term, financial stability. And so I think those were the two that surprised me. I mean, Kristy obviously coaching with the Wizards, it made it seem logical that she would stay in Washington and defend a championship. So I would say those are surprising, but it came down for a lot of players to who was willing to pay the most money. And some this year that difference was so significant. The difference between a max salary and a vet minimum, you're talking about the difference in like potentially $150,000. So just a huge change in general in terms of how the collective bargaining agreement affected my calls, and who I was talking to and what they looked like. So anybody else want to share their surprises? Darius, did you have any?
I think Bonner going to Connecticut was, you knew they were going to move her, but going to Connecticut was a surprise just because of, knowing her and her situation and where she's from, being, further away from home. And also just, she's been with that franchise, since she was drafted. So playing somewhere for so long and then just deciding to change course and not finish out your career there, I think that was a surprising move to me.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add, kind of on the other extreme of this is, Chris, you said this was arguably the most active free agency period, and it for sure was. Okay. But I also think it's the new normal. That's, kind of the new thing everybody likes to say with, everything we're going through. This is the new normal, and that's the new normal. Everything's the new normal. But I do think this level of player movement, while it seems unprecedented now, I think will be very much the way things work going forward. As a result of what Coach Collen said, the way you assemble a roster has just become very different. The spread between the middle of the road salary and the high end salary has become much greater, and the amount of maximum contracts you can have on your roster. I mean, for forever, all the rosters were assembled in the same way: 6 maximum contracts, 5 versions of a rookie contract or a vet minimum, 1 more player, everybody moves on. Okay, that's how every roster looked, basically. And you can't do that anymore. So now it's going to be, which 4 do we want on a max? And then how do we assemble the other pieces? And as players advance and they want their max-ish contract, a lot of them are going to have to move to get it. And we're going to see this kind of movement going forward, I think.
Well, let's take that a step further and think about, if you're thinking about players that are not currently on rosters and have been key veterans in this league, a Shavonte Zellis, an Essence Carson, an Alex Bentley, players that, I don't think we're going into this offseason thinking retirement, and I'm not suggesting they are. But, I think when you think about how these rosters have to be built and playing with 11 players instead of 12, it's going to make it sometimes easier to keep a minimum contract, whether it's a young player, a rookie contract versus, a vet that thinks they're worth more than vet minimum, and thinks, okay, well now 100 isn't that much. 100,000 or 100,000 was a really good contract for a veteran a year ago. Now all of a sudden they look at that and think that's not a good contract. But we have to decide as an organization, do we want to invest 100,000 in a bench player, or do we go with youth and always be prepared, because 2 years from now for us, Tiffany Hayes and Elizabeth Williams are going to be coming off contract. Are we ready? Do we have the money? Have we prepared to have the cap space to keep them both if we want to? And so, you always have to think 1, 2, and 3 years out.
What about right now? We're obviously in a time that we can't interact with our players. How are they keeping active? How are we engaging with them? What is the virtual world for our athletes with us? And how do we get them to stay in shape? And what's the plan moving forward until this is done and we can be together as a group?
Well, I mean, in different ways, and every player's in a different situation. Some of it's where they're living. Do they have access to a gym? What state are they in? I mean, obviously, not to get into politicizing any of this, but, gyms are going to start opening here on Friday. I see Tiffany Hayes is going to be in her gym, I'm sure, the first one in her own gym on Friday. And so I think it really just depends on where you live and what access you have. I know, when I talked to Renee a couple weeks ago or a week ago, she hadn't left her apartment or her condo in like 4 weeks. She'd bought an extra freezer and loaded up her freezer, and they'd really stayed in, and certainly were having things delivered to their condo. But, she'd done everything from her condo and hadn't really left. So I think for all of them, they're in different situations. Do they have equipment? Do they have access to a court, even if it's outdoor? And so we're just trying to meet them where they're at. Those of you guys who've followed our Instagram live and things with Jamal, our new strength coach, has been in touch with them and put them all on a nutrition program, put them all on a workout program, tried to meet them where they were at in terms of what they were capable of doing, and really just giving them the resources that he can to help them if they needed it. And so, some of them are using that software really, really closely. Some of them, kind of have their own routines and are doing their own things, but, we're just trying to provide them whatever resource we can to help them.
One of the great answers we got when we talked to people pre-draft was my favorite answer of any question during the whole pre-draft process. We asked Kennedy Carter what she was doing to stay in shape during the quarantine, and she lit up and talks about how much she loved being able to go back outside on the park, on the playground to work on her game, because she just loves ball, and that's where she first learned it. That's where her dad took her to work her out, and she got so excited about talking about, man, I'm going outside, I'm going to the park, I'm working my game on the asphalt. And so I just thought that was like the best answer ever from somebody who just obviously loves to play.
Yeah, she definitely loves to play. There's no doubt about that. I think we have a keeper there for sure. So we've gotten some questions about, how we engage our fans during the shutdown and how do we welcome our draftees virtually. Our staff is still up and running. They're doing it from home. They're doing a great job, and I can't give them enough credit for what they're doing. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes, Maury Povich might be on, or, who knows, but they're focused on work and not the other things. And so, we're trying to do everything that we can from a social perspective. Our sales reps are continuously calling our season ticket holders. They're still inquiring with folks that had interest in the past. We're talking to our partners, our sponsors. As you may or may not aware, we just announced Inspire Brands, which owns multiple brands that are big time, is a big partner of ours now. And so we're doing everything that we can to engage with the fans, with our players, making sure they're aware of what's going on. We're having obviously a virtual town hall. We had a pre-draft press conference that we posted online. We had a post-draft press conference that we hosted online. We obviously interacted during the draft itself. We want to make sure that we're always accessible to everyone the best that we can. I would suggest, as far as, welcoming our new players, and that includes, trades and probably our returning players, because it's a whole different team. They'd love to hear from you. And I think that you could shout out on Twitter or Instagram or any social. I think they love to be engaged. I think they're proud to be members of the Dream. I think they're proud to represent this community. And, if you look historically at the Dream, there were not a lot of free agents that came here. If you look at the last 3 years, we've been quite successful in bringing new people here to be a part of this community, be engaged in this community. And I think that's a credit to the coaches. And I think that, they want to be here and they know that we're building something special. I look at last year as an anomaly personally. We had injured players. We had a player that did not play the entire season. We could not fill that roster spot because it was a guaranteed contract, which means we couldn't go out and get somebody else because we had no money to do so. And if we had done so, we would have to do that very early on in the year, as opposed to in April, when there's no players left to bring into camp. So, and as Mike pointed out, we won all the close games in 2018. Maybe we shouldn't have done that, but we did. So I see this year as getting back to norm. I think that we're a team that can be extremely competitive. I'm really excited about that. So going off on a couple tangents, welcome the players any way that you'd like to do so. But, all of them are important to us. So don't just focus on one, focus on many. And, we've offered a lot of new things for our season ticket holders. And I'm going to have to read this because I don't have it all by memory, but we have discounts on merchandise based upon how many years you've been a member, free preseason game. We've never offered that before, nor have we had a preseason game at home in a long time. And while that may not be the case this year, we'll make sure it's the case next year. Draft party, which had to be canceled, so I apologize, but the virtual town hall, which we're doing, pre-sale events to other things going on at Gateway Center, we'll have discounts for that. Guaranteed giveaways that we have, baseball hats for the people who bought season tickets by a set date, access to player autograph sessions, discounts off box office prices. We have a lot of things going on, and we'll continue to do that. We're trying to revamp, and we want to make sure that you feel important. And I know that's hard sometimes, but every one of you is very important to us. That will never change. You're our lifeblood. And I say the same thing about our sponsors, our partners, the media. Everyone's important to our organization. So we want to make sure that you feel that and believe that. So we certainly appreciate that. Let me get back to a couple more questions here.
Let me throw this out to you guys. I know that I often get like DMs on Instagram and all different ways people will ask about, quite frankly, what I'm wearing. Okay. So for the draft, I had a different top on, and I got a bunch of people reach out to me about wondering how they could get that. Well, here's what I do as a fashion, enjoying fashion. These are all one-of-a-kind pieces that everybody up here is wearing today. Obviously, Darius and Mike match, but even with Chris, I tend to go to the Nike store and get what I want and things that I like. And then we go and have them embroidered so that we have stuff that doesn't look like everybody else's. I like to have this so that when we're out scouting, we have things that we like to wear in college gyms. I do a lot of PR stuff. Everybody knows I don't say no to much. So I just like to have a lot of different things. So that's the deal. A lot of times the things that you'll see us wearing are not things that are going to be on our website or things you can necessarily order, but I don't think it's wrong for anyone to, get stuff they like and have it embroidered. So there's your promo of the night.
Since we're all staying at home, learn to sew, and you can create your own stitches on the new gear. But Dan, who's listening in on the call, and our folks, we have a lot of new merchandise that's coming in. A lot of it was going to be unveiled at the arena this year. Again, based upon as the season plays itself out, we'll have more and more new logoed items available for all of you. We hope that you'll partake and start wearing our team colors and pride and our new logo. We're really excited about it. The new uniforms were kind of unveiled the other day with the Inspire patch. We love them. And those are 1 year only. Next year, there'll be new uniforms again through the Nike contracts. We're excited about that. Another question. When a fan comes to a game for the first time, what type of team would you like them to see? What do you want your team's identity to be?
Good question.
Mm.
This is pretty easy for me. I think, we go back to like the competitive side. Like I just, you guys have certainly seen my personality on the sideline if you have been to a game, but I've never been the tallest player, 5'5", listed at 5'7" in college, but I just think I want a team that's always going to compete, that's always willing to outwork. I want you to see a team that looks prepared. We may not always make open shots, we may not always get every stop, but a team that has synergy. I mean, our goal is to always have a team that has synergy at both ends of the floor, that we're not going to be afraid to get on the floor. We want to be the toughest team, and a team that isn't going to be outworked. More specifically this year, while, I know we've always had a defensive identity at our core in terms of the roster we inherited, we've obviously gone out and added pieces that can really score the basketball. And so the biggest key for us when we start the season is we want to play with great pace. It's something we didn't do a year ago. We got better at it our first year. We definitely, because we weren't getting as many stops, we had a lot of minor injuries throughout the season, even though we didn't have Angel all year. We had injuries to a lot of players at a lot of times, with Monique being out, Tiffany Hayes being out, so, we want to start the season with an incredible amount of pace. As a coach, I'd rather let them play more and call fewer plays, so in a simplistic world, we're playing with pace. We're running to the rim, we're running to the corners, and we're taking shots in transition or out of early actions, shots in those first 8 seconds. But outside of that, offensively, we just want to really be a team where the ball has a lot of energy. The ball touches a lot of players' hands, it moves, and that we do a good job of taking advantage of mismatches and playing to players' strengths. So obviously that's a question that could go on and on and on. But I think it starts with us, being a team that is fun to watch because of our pace, because of our energy. And I think as much as anything with this team, I think we've added a lot of players that play the game with a lot of joy. You're going to see Courtney Williams as someone who loves to play the game. Shakina Strickland can light up an arena, making open shots and cheering on her teammates. And so, I just think we've added a lot of pieces that'll really be fun to watch play the game.
Darius, Mike, any additions to that? No? You well said this time, Nicki. See, Mike did not outdo you. Let's be clear on that, okay?
Well said every time. I serve at the pleasure of...
So another question to come in about, as an organization that creates an atmosphere of togetherness, are we sharing the positive and public messaging that encourages our fans to remain safe and sensible by maintaining a shelter-in-place posture? The answer to that is yes. We did a PSA a couple of weeks back that Brennan and Dan and Kelsey put together for us with the team and myself and the coaches, which basically garnered a lot of views. And it was out there. Then we also did something with all the other sports teams in Atlanta. If you go to our website, there's a link about COVID-19 and how to wash your hands and how to make a mask and information that's coming from the league. So we're doing everything that we can to make sure that our fans are informed at all times of everything as it relates to COVID-19 and this pandemic. It's just an amazing time. We're going through this together, as everybody says, but we want to make sure that you understand it from our perspective. So, if our team site is your resource, there's a lot of information there. We hope that you'll go to other sites for information as it relates to COVID-19, but we are putting a lot of things out there. What do you guys think from the bigger picture of things? How would you like to see this season play out? What would be ideal in your world? Even though we really don't know what's going to happen from the league perspective, what would be ideal for you, knowing that training camp was due to start on Sunday? That's obviously not going to happen. We know that there will be no games in May as of right now, but what would you like to see happen?
That's such an open-ended question.
It is.
Semi-difficult to answer. I mean, ultimately, I think as basketball coaches, we just want to coach. I mean, we want to get back out onto the practice floor. I think, everybody has a different process, in terms of how they go about their day to day or their schedule in general. I think for me, when this thing hit, after, I mean, I wish I could describe free agency and what it was like, in terms of like what my schedule looked like through the course of those 3 weeks. But when we came out on the other side of free agency, and the excitement of adding a piece in the draft and how we were going to build it, and April 26th being circled on the calendar, when COVID hit, it was, for me, I mean, I don't know if I would say that I was clinically depressed, but I would say that for, a week to 10 days, I certainly was in my feelings about like what's going to happen and wanting to care maybe more about, a lost season or, not getting to get on the floor with these guys when we wanted to. And certainly that turned around a little bit, realizing that this was a little bigger than our little world of basketball and what it meant. But, I think for us, it's any opportunity we get to really get this team out onto the floor and figure out how we're going to work with them and how we can really mold these pieces together. I mean, I don't care if it's June or July. For me, ideal is just opportunity, and while I don't think it's ever going to be ideal to play in arenas with no fans, if that's what all 12 teams are doing and we have the same advantage/disadvantage as everybody else, then by gosh, it's our job as a staff to figure out, how to play our best basketball in that environment. And so, that's all I would say at this point is finding a way to be able to do it in a safe environment. We're smart enough to know that, we don't want to put players at risk. We don't want to put any personnel at risk, in for justifying it for getting sports back out.
If you could each describe yourself in one word as a coach, what would it be? We're stuck on Nicki, apparently.
Oh, I'm starting. I think, I guess I would say passionate.
DT?
Nicki stole my word. So
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
I would say, shoot. Funny.
Coach Mike?
It's a two-pronged answer. If you ask, this is my guess, if you ask the college players who played for me as a head coach, they would say the word is demanding. And if you ask the players who have played for me as an assistant, they would say the word is encouraging. So, Jekyll, Hyde.
Hey, Mike, we joke a little bit internally about you sometimes. What's Angry Mike? Tell everybody a little bit about what Angry Mike might be and how often Angry Mike shows up.
Angry Mike does not appear very often, but Angry Mike is when Captain Sunshine, which is who I normally am, just bottles it up to the point where it cannot be bottled anymore, and then it just spills out for a moment or two. Angry Mike is very direct.
I'd have to say that, obviously being part of these for 3 years, that you guys are funny, and there's a lot of humor in there, and there's a lot of camaraderie, and that's one of the best things about this organization. I said on our media call the other day is that we have a staff that I love to be around, and I think all of you guys would say the same thing, that it's a pleasure to be with one another, and I think that's what makes a team successful, is the chemistry that starts with the coaching staff, and then obviously as it melds itself down to the players itself. But I think that's the most exciting thing about us. So whatever those words are to describe you, I think the biggest thing for me is cohesiveness or chemistry, because I think that you guys all have that, and you all bring different pieces, and you're on the same page, and then there's never a delineation. You guys believe it the same way, and you play it the same way. So, again, from here, it's an honor to work with you guys. It's great. We're kind of wrapping up our time here. We certainly want to say, thank you to all of our season ticket holders and all those people that may be tuning in or watch this in the future. It's very important that you continue to support us. We appreciate it. We know that we're still growing our brand. We know that a long time ago when Atlanta was formed, there were 6,500 season ticket holders where they couldn't have a franchise. We don't have that many, as you all know, but we'd like to get back there. And it starts with all of you coming to the games and telling your friends and family and coming to the games and giving any referrals to our sales reps. And ultimately, we want to grow a brand that you guys are proud of. And I think we've done a lot in the last couple of years to turn this around. And last season aside, we still feel that we're headed in the right direction, and we want you to all participate in this. And we're very excited about that. But on those words, Darius, Mike, Nicki, any last words you'd like to share with our fans?
No, I just wanted to say thank you as well. There's no doubt for me, that going from the euphoria of a first year head coach in this league and franchise first, and, the excitement of 2018 to potentially the disappointment of 2019, I would just say, hang in there with us. We never stopped working. I appreciated the comments post game, and in terms of, people realizing that we weren't quitting last year. Certainly we've upgraded our roster. We think we're going to be better, but, bear with us because it's still going to be a work in progress. But, we want to compete, not just for each other, but, for this city, for this franchise, and so, we'll always be seriously thinking about, all of you when it comes to, how we do things and why we do things.
And I'll just add, because I actually was a season ticket holder before becoming a coach. I was a season ticket holder for 2 years with the Dream at State Farm now, but I forget what it was called before. And then Georgia Tech, Phillips Arena, right? So I've seen it come full circle from being a season ticket holder to now being a part of the organization, and the growth and the hard work and dedication that is put into putting a good product on the floor. And, I just want to thank you guys and hope it continues to grow with your support. That's all.
Yeah, I just look forward to seeing everybody in the gym again. Right? Always fun to be in the gym. Looking forward to seeing everybody in the gym.
Well, on that note, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. Stay in tune. Please follow our social channels. We'll obviously update you on any news when it's fit to share. But we're excited about the upcoming season. We're excited about our roster. We're excited as a group to get back out there and get at it. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great night. Stay safe and healthy, and social distance at all times. Wash your hands. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Here.